presentación típica. Buenas a todos, chavales. Otro viernes más con el Star Citizen Live. Que en este caso se llama Construyendo comportamientos de NPCs. Y con respecto al ISC, pues lo hacemos más tarde. Lo hacemos más tarde, chicos. Y bueno, pues ahí está el negocio. Ahí está el negocio. Vamos a ver. Faltan 5 minutillos para que empiece aquí el salseo. Bueno, entonces, Rael, que ya estás preparado para mañana, tío. Mañana, ojo, Mañana, ojo. No sé a qué hora habrá salido el ISC, la verdad. No tengo idea. Buenas, Eco. Ya ves. Hice de puta madre. Venir a cortar entonces y hacerlo hoy. Ya ves. Ya ves, la capital de Anvil. Madre mía. Nave capital de Anvil, Ojo. Todavía es especulación, pero bueno. Pues hay muchas. Hay muchas cosas que llevan a pensar eso, desde luego. En la exposición de Anvil Aerospace, Zorro, hay un mensaje de megafonía que indica que la UE ha invitado a Anvil, junto con ingenieros, a participar en un evento en MacArthur, en el sistema Killian, para impulsar las nuevas tecnologías de la aviación. Y en MacArthur es donde, bueno, aparte de que es los cuarteles generales de la Marina, es donde se han hecho naves como la Bengal. Buenas, Jor. Entonces, basado en ese anuncio de megafonía, todo parece indicar que podemos estar ante una nueva nave capital de Anvil. Porque además dice que se celebrará el año que viene en MacArthur, en el sistema Killian. El año que viene. O sea que podría ser que tengamos eso. Que tengamos una nave capital de Anvil. Buenas, Villanarco. Y no podría referirse al F8. Es que concretamente el lore detalla un poquito eso. Y LOL. Buenas, Chinarro. Y además estuvimos viendo naves icónicas supuestas de Anvil y tal. Lo que pasa es que, claro, si es nave nueva. Porque si es una nave nueva, es el año que viene, es una nave nueva. Porque lo que estuvimos haciendo ayer del Devastador y todo eso, en realidad es una nave nueva. Sí.
All right. This is our sound check. This is my voice.
Y la
Testing,
F8 ya
testing,
lleva
testing.
tiempo en
Fran, what does
servicio.
your voice sound like?
Hi, it's Fran here. Gonna talk about lots of cool stuff today.
I'm talking
You
about
know?
lots of cool stuff.
Yes. Actually, I really like this microphone. It just makes my voice really, deep. Can have a podcast with this headset. It's like it sounds perfect.
Yeah. How about you, Dan?
Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. This is my voice.
Oh, that's a pretty good voice. How about you, Jacob?
Yep, this is my voice. Much better than the other ones, of course.
It's a pretty good looking voice.
Thank you very
It's
much.
the best voice I've ever heard.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. Making some adjustments here. Okay, and last Hayden, what's your voice look like?
Hello, not as good as Jacob's.
Well, we do what we can.
No one's as good as mine.
There's a level here, like here's Jacob, and then it's like.
Buenas, Chinarro.
Yeah. All right. So we're still adjusting. Silky's like finally
Harlow.
Jared disquieted. Yep, you got to deal with me. Sorry, everybody.
No worries.
I was talking to them, not you.
Can't really see my tardigrade. Tardigrade.
Tardigrade.
Tardigrade.
Yeah. All right, you guys ready to get started?
Mhm.
All right. Let's get started. Let's and a 5, and a 4, and a 3. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Star Citizen Live Gamedev, Building NPC Behaviors. I'm your host, Jared Huckabee. And if you've never seen Star Citizen Live before, it's where we take about an hour out of the end of our week, hang out with some of our esteemed Cloud Imperium Games developers, either answer some questions, do a little back and forth. Sometimes we take a look at what they're working on. Today, we are doing something that we've never done in the 7 years I've been doing this for CIG. We are going to look at the actual process of creating NPC behaviors. And to do that, we are
Van a revisar el proceso de crear comportamientos en NPC. Qué locura la silla del pavo de la derecha, ¿no? Ahí con luces de LED.
do for Star Citizen.
Sounds good. So, hi everybody. My name is Francesco Roccucci, and I'm the AI director in Cloud Imperium Games. So, I try to supervise all the AI development and help everybody with the proper planning, the proper development of architecture, and support everybody in the behavior, creation as well.
Let me see that shirt you're wearing.
What? Sorry?
Let me see that shirt you're wearing.
So this is a very nice version of the Space Invader game. See, with Vincenzo. That is a Targ. How do you pronounce it, Jared? Targ in English? Tardigrade?
Tardigrade?
Exactly. I can never pronounce it correctly in English. In Italian would be tardigrado.
Tardigrado, vaya tela. Bueno, Francesco Vincenzo, que es director de arte en Cloud Imperium Games.
Been at CIG for about 4 years now. I'm one of the game designers here. Currently working on the NPC behaviors, as this.
Diseñador de juego, lleva trabajando 4 años en Star Citizen ya y ahora mismo trabajando en el comportamiento de NPCs.
Exciting. Jacob, the man with the blurred background, what are you trying to hide?
Oh, you don't want to know. You don't want to know.
Who are you and what do you do for Star Citizen?
I'm Jacob. I'm a junior AI programmer, and I joined here about 3 months ago. So it's my first full-time job. It's my first job in the games development sort of sector. And I work on behavior as well, like AI behavior, but also like sort of the the backbone of it, like the implementation and the code and stuff like that. So excited to be here.
Trabaja en la... Bueno, es picador de código, trabaja en la implementación del código y demás.
Here is what Jacob has worked on already.
Yeah, exactly. So if you have any complaints, you should contact me.
No finger pointing.
And last but certainly not least, Hayden, who are you and what do you do for Star Citizen?
Hello, I'm Hayden McElroy. I'm a junior technical designer, and I basically do what Dan does, just with a little less documentation.
Just a little
Yeah,
less.
then the higher up you go, the more documentation you have to do.
You're right.
Lucky
Yeah.
you.
And let's go ahead and mention Idris. Idris was going to join us today, but he's having some trouble joining on Zoom. So Idris, you're with us in spirit. All right. So Fran, this is
Cool.
this is your program. We're all here to peanut gallery and just tell you where you're messing up and what you're doing wrong while you work.
No pressure, eh? No pressure.
Why don't you start us off? What is an NPC behavior and what are we doing today?
So sure. Basically, I think like all of us here work both on some of us again as programmer work on some of the systems. We define, we design, and we build, implement. Some others, as the designers are mostly working with these systems we build, and they help us building. So the behaviors are mostly the brain of the NPCs, right? So the way we split the things is we try to build. First of all, as much as possible, it needs to be data-driven to scale up, right? In this game, it's so huge. We need to just, allow the designers and content creator to create content that we use automatically, right? To patch the game and expand the game. And one of the things we want to show today is something that me and Dan have been working on, since a while. And I think we also show some sneak peek during the, mostly during the monthly reports, but is the engineer behavior as an example of how we build a behavior from.
Una de las cosas que el comportamiento de los NPCs es básicamente el cerebro de los NPCs. Y dice que lo han dividido en varias partes para poder escalarlo luego a lo que es el juego, pues teniendo en cuenta que este juego es enorme. Y hoy se van a meter de lleno en el comportamiento del NPC como ingeniero.
Eventually, I'm sure like a lot of people that are watching here, they saw the Tony's video, that was out this week, and all these things with the population manager. Oh, Idris, join us. But basically all this really cool population manager, and the visual NPC and something like this, we can basically spawn them in the right context, and their context is the activity of what they're trying to do and the environment which they are in. So yeah, basically that is what a behavior is. And to achieve that, let's say an engineer, you have a lot of pieces that, we have to take care of. That is like building the environment or making sure that the NPCs understand the environment as well. And, and then there is the actual decision logic, decision flow. And what that means is that we try to abstract our like thought process flow is like, oh, I want to find something that is broken. I want to repair something that is broken. And then how that basically construct the actual action that they need to perform, it tries to be as generic as possible, as modular as possible. And this is what we will see today.
All right,
Claro, dice que a la hora de tratar de hacer los NPCs, pues tratan de hacer que tenga un diálogo, en plan diciendo que tenga pues tengo que reparar algo, digo al NPC, o tengo que hacer algo, y luego pues haga la acción de la forma lo más general y modular posible para luego que se pueda escalar, ¿no? Y eso es lo que van a hacer hoy.
Squeeze like months and months worth of work into an hour. So
yes. So we are trying to focus on specific stuff. We'll see how much time we have. Of course, we can go more in detail. Maybe Jared, you can book us for another session after this. We can go more in detail later.
Hey, I got to do this every Friday, so. Good. All right, so we've got your screen share up on the
Cool.
stream now. Where do we start?
So we start with, this is our engine, right? So this is, I think, I've been seen in the past, but basically this is an empty level, just like completely empty. This is what we use for testing, for development, and for actually trying and testing the proper environment. So what we'll do today, of course, is building a test environment. First of all,
lo que van a hacer es construir un entorno de pruebas mediante este programa.
Pretty much nothing, we can do. So we will use what we call designers tool. That is like a kind of solid creation tool. We can create like a platform. And the way we move around.
Claro, tienen una herramienta que se llama Designer Tool y que crean una plataforma sólida.
Where we can place NPC. Now we are still in 0G, so if I still jump in game, I will still float around. So first thing I want to do is add some gravity. I will go in the entity.
Claro, están añadiendo la gravedad al entorno de prueba porque están en 0G. Ahí estamos viendo cómo la ponen.
As you see here, there are like this little, this little square is where now gravity is. So if I go next to here, and I will jump in the game, I'm here. Cool. So I'm perfectly in the level. I can walk around. Let's take an NPC. As the company, is very complex in the process that we have to create from the character to the behavior. So let's say usually what we start is, let's say we want to do an engineer. In the parallel process, we have the character team that creates the character like as the human body, and then all the loadouts that the engineer comes with. So in this case, we can just grab like one of the engineering in new Babbage, I don't know, or something like this. There are female and male, of course. We can start with,
Me dice que este proceso lo hacen en paralelo con el equipo de personajes que crean el diseño del personaje y lo que lleva, ¿no? Y ahora en este caso pues van a escoger un ingeniero que tienen creado de otro lugar, que lo van a plantar ahí. Un ingeniero mujer.
More or less polish, because of course we want to polish one first and then do the retargeting. So first of all, now we have this character, and that's what I wanted to show you is basically in each character or each entity in general, it depends on the entity type, we can configure some instance properties, and some are behavior related, right? So the one that we can show you here is that this is now assigned a behavior that is called PU engineer, or better, an activity that is called PU engineering. This is the old activity that we have sometimes in PU, where you see some of the engineer going around, and use like some work zone and weld stuff and
Dice que en ese conjunto, en esa lista tienen una serie de propiedades y algunas de ellas pues tienen que ver con el comportamiento de NPCs. Entonces ahora mismo vemos que tenemos ahí una pestaña que pone PU Engineer, que en ese caso pues sería un comportamiento para el comportamiento antiguo que tenían para lo que sería que el personaje pues cuando íbamos a una zona de aterrizaje o algo así, pues viéramos haciendo pues temas de reparación, o que simulaba que hacía temas de reparación, súper sencillo, ¿no?
Folders, which type of variable they can use, and so on and so on. But let's start with one. I take my folder, I make a new behavior, I call it engineer, I show. This is gonna be the name that we can reference to inside the engine, and we can assign it to here. And in general, like everything we do here gets live hot reloaded. So if right now, for example, we take a sub-activity, we create a generic one that is like, if nothing happens, if he has nothing to do, it just goes.
Claro, están creando un nuevo comportamiento y estamos viendo cómo le han llamado Engineer iShow, ¿no? Para lo que es la presentación de este programa. Y han añadido también, lo primero que tienen que hacer es añadir pues subactividades, ¿no? Para las diferentes cosas que pueden realizar. En este caso han añadido la de idle, que es cuando no tiene nada que hacer, que es la de reposo.
Gonna be there. This pretty much should never happen. So we'll put it like in a very high or very low priority, that is a very high number. And what we usually tend to do as a first step, we just put like, these are all the nodes, all the things that we can put in the logic. Let's put, we call one that is called halt. Halt is pretty much doing nothing. It just stays there, the behavior runs, and it's gonna be there forever. So what we're gonna test if this is already working. We jump in the game, we have this character here. If we jump in the game, what we can do, we can look at the character, because this is gonna be a very easy thing to debug. And we press on our keyboards, we have like the slash on the numpad. And basically what we can see is like there will be on screen some information about the behavior. Here you can see, of course, like this the log, but on top you can see the name of the activity, that is engineering I showed.
Está diciendo que por pantalla ahora mismo le muestra un comportamiento sobre... O sea, le muestra información sobre el comportamiento, ¿no? Sobre el behavior que hizo.
That is like
del NPC, se ve por ahí en pantalla, ¿no?
Or the sub-activity start. So now we have a really basic things that kind of works, of course, doesn't do anything. So what we want to do is right now we want to verify if this character can move around, because if he can't move, he's definitely not going to be able to interact with anything. What we usually do is that we have this AI physics button that allows us to move in the environment, but also to interact with the object. So right now the behavior.
Claro, lo primero que tienen que mirar antes de empezar a trabajar con el personaje para definir comportamientos es asegurarse que se pueda mover. Y tienen ahí una herramienta que se llama AI Physics que verifica eso, ¿no?
Is the representation of the environment for the eye.
O sea, verifica, por ejemplo, pues, que las físicas del personaje estén.
On the environment, we can decide if we want to snap to the ground, to a grid. Just right now, just put it that we want to keep it on the solid. We just create like a square around the character. We can move it a bit down. We can sync it a little bit more. We save, so it's good practice save all the time because never know if it crashes eventually. And we get the back like draw like this one. As you can see, there's this blue like square. And we can see how it's implemented a bit more. Sorry, there's like a bit out of my screen. So if we see this is our console, we can see like CVARs that are like a way for us to control the environment. The back draw, we can put like 3. It's usually showing us how this is represented internally. That is like tiles and triangles. So the eye usually when it moves around to the environment, it creates like a path that is just transitioning through those triangles or through those tiles. If we middle click, now we run with shift middle click, we can make the walk movement and we can test how the locomotion works. And with alt.
Claro, lo que están haciendo, lo que vemos ahí, que están, bueno, mediante clics están testeando el movimiento y vemos cómo han hecho una plaza, un volumen dentro de lo que era la superficie esta para delimitar por dónde se podía mover el NPC, ¿no? Entonces de esa manera pueden comprobar que el NPC tiene una movilidad correcta, se mueve bien, etc.
Yeah, exactly.
This recording for new starters.
We could. It's actually, I was thinking the same when I was preparing it. So I think like.
Oh, you have no idea. One of the how often I get messaged from new employees who are just starting and like, hey Jared, I just want to say hi. I learned about the project from watching your videos, and I decided you were the place I wanted to work at because of the videos. So yeah.
It is helpful to show these tools, right? Because I think sometimes we are also like so much deep into the.
Está diciendo Jared que le ha pasado con nuevos empleados que contactan con él diciéndole que he visto el vídeo que hacéis en el Star Citizen Live y gracias a eso pues he descubierto que quiero trabajar en Cloud Imperium Games, ¿no? Que lo hice por estos vídeos que están enseñando que bueno, pues al final hay gente que se ve interesada por el proyecto, ¿no? Que quiere trabajar en él.
For this engineer, and a way to have something to do is of course defining, what they should do. That is the designer in charge, and maybe you can tell us something about what you would like him to do, or what usually an engineer does for us.
Usually I guess he would go to something and fix it?
Yes,
check it out, examine it?
Vale, pues ahora están hablando de cuál sería el comportamiento que haría un NPC, ¿no? Entonces dice Dalando, pues normalmente iría a un lugar y arreglaría algo.
Asked to do, and is usually repair stuff, right? This is what we want them to do. So one thing that
sorry, I was just going to say, like the key corners. We tend to try and find like a key cornerstone of every single behavior. Like what is the purpose for having this behavior? Because otherwise, there's nothing really unique about them, and they could just all be running the same behaviors. So with the engineer, it's more about they can do everything like everybody else, like they're getting changed into whatever the relevant clothes are, or finding somewhere to sit if they need a rest or things like that. But for the engineer, it's all about maintaining things. Their job is literally to
Claro, dice que todos los NPCs en realidad tienen que saber hacer las básicas, ¿no? Que sería un ingeniero al final pues puede descansar, hacer sus rondas, sus rutinas como cualquier otro NPC, pero tiene la peculiaridad de que repara cosas, ¿no? Eso sería la clave de un ingeniero.
Type of, a job to do. And in essence, I think what is good is that they actually, I think compared to lots of games where I think usually tends to do stuff, but it's not really having an impact on anything, right? What we are trying to build is something that, whatever action they do actually has an impact on the game. So what we want to show today is like, imagine
aquí la diferencia en Star Citizen con respecto a otros muchos juegos que vemos, ¿no? Es que en el caso de esta IA no quieren que esté moneando el ingeniero, sino que realmente las acciones que esté realizando tenga un impacto sobre el juego, realmente físicamente esté haciendo algo en una entidad, modificando algo, ¿no?
if the AI does, it has the same exact effect as what the player would do. So, for example, if you hire this guy, and you want him to be your engineer, on board of your ship, you can then give him command and say, like, what, maintain all the wall panels in my ship, or what, I see in my map that this wall panel is broken. Can you repair exactly this one? And this is how we are building these behaviors, that they are sort of API of interface where you can control them. In essence, it's like designer writing a mission are kind of doing the same as a player would do when they give commands to an NPC. So right now what I prepared, just to speed
Claro,
up a little bit.
lo que están comentando es que la idea de que el día de mañana, pues con un NPC, si nosotros estamos a bordo de una nave y queremos que repare pues una determinada sección de la nave, pues que podamos asignarle a ese NPC esa sección como se lo podríamos pedir a cualquier jugador. O el hecho de que si queremos que repare un panel concreto, que se lo podamos pedir como también lo haríamos con otro jugador. Entonces, que basado en eso, pues que tendremos como una... O sea, que tiene que haber una pequeña interfaz, ¿no? Para poder hacer ese tipo de peticiones.
The idea is that the wall panel is supposed to house any of those type of components, and it could be in any environment. The engineer is more of a infrastructure maintenance person versus
Exactly.
a mechanic that is more like small ship maintenance.
So this one basically, yeah, absolutely. And this is like one of the example we use today, and
Claro, está comentando de que no tiene por qué haber algo, o sea, puede ser parte de la estructura simplemente lo que es el ingeniero, porque dice que el ingeniero sería pues encargado de mantener una estructura, hacer mantenimiento de una infraestructura, ¿no? Y en el caso o sea, distinguiéndolo de lo que sería un mecánico que pues estaría encargado de arreglar una pequeña nave o algo así. Hacen esa distinción.
where, for example, in this case, this is the wall panel. We have two. Let me put the wall panel as well. These people can have like a visual reference to that. Basically, the wall panel template. You see, you have like two relays attached to a panel, and then inside each relay you have three subcomponents. And what we want, of course, is like we don't want to hard code any information.
Están poniendo dos relays anclados a un panel y cada uno de ellos tiene 3 subcomponentes, ¿no?
This to come from the setup of the object. And this is what we will build today. So what we'll create right now is, those are not usable yet. Those are just piece of art. We want to make sure these objects become usable, basically. So the first thing we will start with is, I would say...
Claro, entonces eso diría que sería como para el futuro, que eso todavía no está usable, entonces que de momento lo que quieren hacer es trabajar con algo que realmente funcione para definir el comportamiento del ingeniero, ¿no? Que funcione ahora.
Use, we will create a variant that we will configure. We call it template show usable. We'll make a new version. We add right now the usable component. What's the usable component? I think we speak about this lots of the times, about what the usables are. In essence, a usable is the knowledge that the AI has about how to interact with that object, right? So in our case right now,
claro, lo que están ahora es definiendo un usable para poder ponerlo ahí, y un usable explica que es el conocimiento que tiene la inteligencia artificial sobre un objeto para poder interactuar con él.
An archetype is that it's a carryable object, right? So we can take this one, we can just select, this is a carryable object. Then what we do is we want to create what we call alignment slot. The alignment slot is the position in which you need to be to interact with that object. Now, right now...
Claro, entonces lo que han hecho ha sido seleccionar un cargable y luego pues pone que el alignment slot sería la posición en la que tiene que estar el NPC para poder interactuar con ese objeto.
And we will reference this one as the root. The root is really the entity position, basically. And if we go in here and we drag this new object that we just created.
Claro, está definiendo el root, que el root sería la posición de la entidad, ¿no?
Now, for example, with the backdraw usable debug draw. Of course, nothing goes there because we need to also enable the debug draw for carryable object, because otherwise there's just a lot of information here. And now you will see there is no alignment slot because the alignment slot alone doesn't do basically any information. It's not, you can, if there is nothing to interact with, then there is no point of even showing information. So what we'll do right now is also adding what we call use slot. The use slot represent sort of a virtual positioning space, or, you know, again, if it's virtual, it's virtual.
Claro, estando como está así no serviría de nada porque no habría sitio donde partir. Entonces tiene que añadir un use slots que sería unas posiciones virtuales desde los cuales los NPCs pueden empezar a interactuar con un objeto.
At the same time around this object to interact.
So you don't
So
have
we call it
multiple NPCs all going
trying
for
to
the same
fight for
thing at the
having
same time.
that as well, exactly, right? So we will make like a use slot is called main, and we will instantiate which type of use channel we can use on those objects. And right now, what the things that we care, I think we won't even have time to show them both, but let's say we can take this object and repair this object, right? So if we search here for take, we see that we have different type of archetypes of the usable and different action. What we want to use is the carryable take, in this case, and we assign the alignment slot from which you can take it. And then we make another.
Claro, entonces están poniendo ahora tienen que establecer el comportamiento, por así decirlo. Entonces tienen el comportamiento de llevar y el comportamiento y desde dónde tienen que partir. Y luego otro que es de mantenimiento, ¿no? Y también añadir, o sea, asignarle también el slot desde el que el NPC puede empezar a interactuar o trabajar.
Objects that they are carryable, they should have their alignment slot depending on the position of the object, but not on the orientation, right? Because the orientation is irrelevant. If these things fall, you might still need to pick it up from whatever position. And this is what we will extend in the next quarters. But right now, let's say we are not planning to interact directly.
Dice que además la posición del objeto no importa porque en futuras implementaciones el NPC pues agarrará el objeto y lo colocará hasta que pueda interactuar con él de forma adecuada.
New variant. Show usable. We make a usable component, we assign it. So this is for was not super.
Refiriéndose a la posición, está tirado, está tumbado, ¿no? Que el NPC pues lo agarrará, lo levantará, pero eso será para futuras implementaciones en futuros trimestres.
And a composition approach, right? So usually most of the things, you know, are inheriting as a functionality from something else. You might have like a vehicle, and then from vehicle you inherit and you create a car, or, you know, but then what happens is that the things are in a way simpler, but a bit more monolithic. What we try to do here is like we try to get this responsibility on the component so you can build it out of the composition of this extra functionality to get.
Claro, lo que tratan de hacer es que en el futuro, pues a partir de varios componentes, el NPC sea capaz de armar algo utilizando los diferentes usables. Acordaros de lo que hacían con el tema del barman, de que, bueno, el barman ahora mismo es capaz de hacer un whisky, ¿no? Con hielo y con Coca-Cola, pues utilizando varios componentes de la barra. Pues esto al final se extrapola también al hecho de poder hacer un vehículo el día de mañana o cosas así, ¿no?
Variable, just for simplicity. And we do something similar in this case. We make the carryable, we create the alignment slot. Since we are not planning right now to interact with this immediately, it is a little bit irrelevant about this one. It's mostly this information is required by the system to be able to understand how those things are attached and how they flow into one another. So this is why it's important. And yeah, we will make the use slots as well in this case. We would call it take. Sorry, this would be still a main use slot, and then we'll have a take from the carryable. We'll assign it to the right alignment slot.
These hierarchies are, I mean, you can't understate how important they are to making all of this actually function. You know, how often is a hierarchy, you know, broken because you have to create 20 different links in order to make these things, and one of the 20 links is broken and the whole thing doesn't work.
Yes, and the problem is often
Claro, está diciendo de que, de que este tipo de manera de trabajar, pues al final que no nos damos cuenta, pero con tal de que una de esas partes esté rota, una de esas acciones no esté funcionando, pues al final hay que tratar de buscarla, porque igual puede provocar que si una de esas partes, uno de esos enlaces que están poniendo no funciona bien, pues todo el comportamiento, toda la rutina se estropee, ¿no?
left tag, you're missing a right tag, and then you'd spend half a day debugging it, and you're like, oh, it was just that, and you missed this one little field. But yeah, there's a lot of information going into these usables. So
Claro, dice que hay muchísima información yendo dentro de estos usables y que al final pues te pasas medio día intentando arreglar un bug y realmente pues era que se te había pasado el poner un algo, ¿no? O algún pequeño detalle que estaba ahí sin poner.
yes, absolutely. That is usually a very good easy way for the
O sea, daros cuenta de que para hacer lo que es el comportamiento de un NPC, como están haciendo, tienen que ellos diseñar diferentes comportamientos dependiendo de diferentes momentos que van enlazando uno tras otro hasta que conforman lo que es la acción entera continuada del NPC, ¿no? Lo que están hablando es de que si uno de esos comportamientos falla o hay algún error en uno de esos subcomportamientos que tienen, que están aquí enlazando, pues que puede llevar un tiempo descubrir cuál ha sido el problema o por qué un NPC no está funcionando, ¿no? Que lleva su tiempo el tratar de reparar eso, ¿no?
stuff in. Now we just need to explain to the usable code basically how this information is available to it. And you have this usable item part. So we can create like one data here that says on the slot sub item 1, we basically can play specific animation when we interact with that, right? So what we want to have is like eventually as a final result is that the engineer can go to the wall panel, understand this is interacting with the fuse that is on the top or the bottom, and then based on where that object is, it needs to play the right animation to take the
Claro, lo que está hablando es que, por ejemplo, si tenemos un panel y tenemos pues un fusible que está en la parte superior izquierda o la parte inferior derecha, dependiendo de donde esté el problema que tenga que hacer el ingeniero, con esa definición de subcomportamientos y de subcomponentes, pues el NPC tiene que saber qué acción utilizar. O sea, ahí está esa acción, ¿no? Que contenida esa acción que indica cómo debe de moverse el NPC según la posición del objeto que tenga que reparar dentro de lo que es el panel.
What it is a lot of game engine have what's called an animation graph, right? The animation graph will basically explain how animation state transition from one to another and which type of animation you need to play. And then maybe usually in this animation state, you can maybe say like, you know, with specific conditions, which animation it gets played or how you can randomize through animation, something like this. Mannequin is a kind of a piece of the puzzle. So it's a sort of database where you can use what we call fragment ID and fragment tags to immediately search for a specific animation that match specific condition. The tags are sort of conditions. So you can say like, are you an AI or a player? Or which type of action are you trying to do? And in our case, let's say, let's go straight like in some example. So it's like we have like what we call fragment ID that could be usable, usable action, usable phase, usable idle. The usable action is the action you can perform when you're in a usable. So we call it usable action. It's just very easy to search. And then, for example, you have all those folders. Those folders are, in essence, the fragment tags. So it's a sort of when you go in a database and you search for some keys, this is what you get, and this is the animation results. In our case, we want to understand which animation we need to pick up specific object. In our cases, the wall panel or the relay has 3 item parts. So how can we identify that? Did the animator and tech animation team give us already something that we can use? So if we go here, if we say, oh, this is the action we want to do, that is the take. So inside take, do we have some version for the wall panel? Oh, yeah, we do. And then we have 2 versions, it's like high and low. And then we can create like, we can take a look at those. And we have like, oh, we have a version for center part, left part, and right part, and it's the same for the bottom, right? So this, what it means is, once we want to search for an action, that is the action take, for a wall panel on the high relay for the fuse that is in the center part 01, this is the animation we will play, right? And then in the animation, we can also specify specific procedural clip layer that is a sort of, Premiere layers, but just like that some play some animation, and some play some code. And here it says when you hit this key, then that item attaches it from the relay. Now it passes in your hand and it detaches from the other one. And as you see,
Lol.
we have
Vale, lo que están hablando así. Están diciendo de que bueno, el equipo de animación, de tecnología de animaciones y demás les ha pasado con bastante información que ellos pueden trabajar, con herramientas que ellos pueden trabajar. Entonces estamos viendo cómo a la hora de escoger un comportamiento, vemos cómo tienen una serie de opciones a la hora primero seleccionar la acción que van a realizar, luego ser más específicos a la hora de qué tipo de acción va a realizar. En este caso, pues un panel de la pared. Y entonces, dentro de la panel de la pared, pues decidir si la animación va a ser inferior, va a ser superior, o sea, en el panel, y luego mirar si está en el componente de la izquierda, en el del medio o en el de la derecha. Y además, mediante eso también pueden precisar la animación concreta de agarrar el objeto, ¿no? Entonces, en el momento que se produce todo eso, que se completa todo eso, es cuando se reconoce, o el motor de juego reconoce que el componente ya no pertenece a lo que es el panel, sino que se queda en la mano del personaje, o sea, en la mano del NPC.
that respect specific tags, and then basically we can sort it out. Let's say we say I want to repair this specific fuse, then we can say like, okay, where is that attached and which animation I need to play. But we could also say, hey, usable, do you have something that is damaged and is a subcomponent attached to you? And then it would be like, yeah, I have 3, right? And it's like, just get this one, and this one is the one attached to the item port 1, and to use this one you need to take the left port 01 mannequin tag. This propagates automatically to the behavior later, and we'll see.
So you're giving it a collection of choices, not every single choice that's available for every single NPC, because that would be horribly unperformative. But you're basically giving it its own little buffet of actions, and based on the situation.
Claro, estamos hablando de que pues no cada NPC tiene todo este conjunto de cosas, sino que para realizar, sino que hay ciertos NPCs que tienen una librería determinada para poder hacer eso. Entonces, el propio NPC, la inteligencia artificial lo que hace es que reconoce qué tipo de acción puede realizar de ese listorro tremendo, porque tiene ese conjunto de habilidades, digamos, asignadas a ese NPC, y entonces, digamos que reacciona y decide el NPC, ¿no? Pues en el caso de que tenga que reparar un tema, pues recurre a esa librería y busca, pues en el caso pues de que sea algo que tenga que reparar a la derecha o algo a la izquierda, pues dice, pues tengo que reparar algo a la derecha o tengo que reparar algo a la izquierda. Entonces recurre a esa librería y el NPC realiza la acción, ¿no?
Cool. So we have this one right now. Seems kind of good, and we can now make the wall panel version. I'll make a variant here. I will make the usable version. And I will basically start to look at the geometry first here, because this is the one that we are actually interacting with. So it's definitely going to be very important to end if art and animation have defined specific location for us to interact with, right? Because in here we have this center point that is also sometimes not even reachable here, but we don't really care, because what we care is the description of the actions. But with the wall panel, we'll just open the character tool. We just open, it says character, but it actually opens pretty much anything. And if we open like this object, we see that we can debug throw, for example, the joints and the joint name, and the front part of the wall panel as something that we call anchor wall panel. And this is the position in which we expect the NPC to align. And this is the same position that we provided to the animation team to make sure that when they make the animation, these are perfectly aligned, you know, and they can perfectly align their hands to the right object, use the right grip, you know, when we play the procedural adjustment, and so on and so on. So what we need to do in this case compared to the other ones is, like, first of all, we will add the usable component, of course. Second, this object is not really carryable. I don't really expect people to just, take away like a wall panel from the ship. But we actually have a wall panel set up like archetypes. And then we basically say, as we've seen in Mannequin, there is a fragment tag for the wall panel. It's called wall panel. So we can say, anytime we interact with this object, we carry the wall panel fragment tag with us, and we propagate it through the chain. Now we do the alignment slot. The alignment slot in this case would still be called like a main alignment slot, but the helper name would be the one that we have seen here, that is anchor wall panel.
Claro, lo que estamos viendo es una descripción de lo que sería un par de paneles ahí que han puesto. Y entonces tienen como donde pone el anchor panel, o sea, el panel, el anclaje del panel, pues sería donde el NPC pues tendría la posición adecuada para actuar. Entonces en este caso están definiendo el comportamiento del supuesto NPC que trabajaría ahí, metiendo los datos para que coincidan con esos puntos que han puesto, que luego pues tienen que tener en cuenta de que tienen que asegurarse de que el arte y bueno, al final supongo que serán métricas y demás, coincida con ese objeto para que el NPC realice las acciones adecuadas sin que parezca que esté clipeando o que no esté haciendo bien las cosas, ¿no?
Like a top one that represents the top relay, and then a bottom one that represents the bottom one. So the fragment tag for the top one, it's gonna be called high, as we've seen in Mannequin before. Now, what we do is that we add the use channel instances. So what can we do on the wall panel top?
Claro, entonces ahora están definiendo lo que sería el panel de arriba y el panel de abajo. Y dice, ¿qué tipo de cosas podemos hacer en el panel de arriba, no? Pues tienen cosas que pueden hacer, un montón de cosas, y ahora dice que vamos a limitar a las cosas que pueden hacer ahora, y dice que en este caso sería abrir, ¿no?
To take something. And what we will do it here is we will put it to the right alignment slot. And then we will add something that is called tags to add on enter and tags to remove on exit. What does this mean is that when I'm trying to use some object that is high or low, I want the player to know that is interacting with the top or the bottom one to branch in the logic. So what we'll do here, we will add a tag to the character automatically when he uses the top one.
It's worth mentioning these are game tags as well, not to be confused with fragment tags.
Yeah, that's a classic, yes, things that it's really hard to follow sometimes because we call it all tags. But yeah, these are game tags. Maybe Dan can give like a little bit while I'm typing. Can you just give it a little bit?
So game tags are generally used, I mean, they're used in every game engine possible. They're a good way of just keeping track of literally anything that you want in any game element to do something, essentially. So if it's a chair, you might give it a tag for a chair, and then you could search for that chair through that game tag, for example. There's no end of ways that you can use game tags, whereas a mannequin tag is very specific to mannequin and the animations that are being played. So a character, that doesn't have any mannequin tags on them will do literally nothing. They'll just stand there. But then as you start adding those mannequin tags to the character, then they'll start collating all of those and go, oh, well, that means I must have to do this animation. And in here right now, when we're adding these fragment tags, we're saying that if you're in, for example, this alignment slot in front of the wall panel, you're probably going to get a wall panel fragment tag, say, and then that will just be one of those many tags that are required to get the...
Le está comentando un poco de lo que es los tags, el TAG, ¿no?, que está añadiendo ahí, que dice que realmente sin los tags, pues el NPC estaría sin hacer nada. Entonces, para realizar cualquier acción necesita un tag, ¿no? Entonces, en este caso, pues si estuviésemos en el panel, ahora, pues cuando el NPC está en el panel, tiene que tener un tag añadido para poder empezar a realizar una acción.
Top use lot, we basically know that one is tagged with a specific game tag. So we say that every use channel, for example, that we interact with in here are related to the top, interaction, basically state or block. And to achieve that, we go to
Claro, entonces, como ha puesto additional fragment tags y le ha puesto high, que es arriba, ¿no? Sabemos que cualquier tipo de acción a mayores que añada, pues sabemos que va a ir anclada a lo que es acciones que tengan que ver con la parte de arriba.
It's gonna be a bit of repetitive work, so you guys can talk while I just read or repeat a bit of this.
Yeah, so
this
what
logic.
Fran's doing right now, adding all of these game tags, is so that he's able to reference those in the subsumption logic, because you wouldn't reference, like say, mannequin tags in the subsumption logic. So you can say if this, if even the character has a game tag of top on it, then make sure that you only play logic that is relevant to the top part of the wall panel. If he has a bottom game tag, then you could do logic that's specific to the bottom half of the wall panel instead.
So basically the tags always, we kind of use the game tags to sort of be able to differentiate in the behavior inside subsumption. So basically what Daniel said, like when you look at these graphs from subsumption, it's literally just to like be able to like take like either one path or another path based on the game tags on the entity.
We use a lot of logic gates in the subsumption logic with.
Claro, está diciendo de que, bueno, el subsumption logic, que bueno, que es el camino, digamos, o la ruta, o las rutas predefinidas que puede tener el NPC, al final que ellos se basan mucho en lógica, ¿no? En lógica para decir, bueno, pues si un NPC tiene unos tags determinados asignados, eso significa que tiene una lógica de comportamiento asociada a ese personaje. Entonces, a medida que vaya caminando, o imaginaros pues que llega pues a una zona de ciudad, y en esa zona de ciudad hay definido un comportamiento general de NPC donde va caminando, y es un ingeniero en este caso, y ese ingeniero pues tiene los tags relacionados con ingeniería o con la necesidad de reparar. Entonces cuando pase por algo que se necesite reparar o tal, dentro de lo que es esa lógica de comportamiento de subsumption, se le activará la bombillita, ¿no? Y dirá, coño, tengo una lógica que se me activa, que tengo que reparar, y entonces llegado al componente pues ya se activa el resto de lógicas de los tags diciendo pues tengo que reparar arriba o tengo que reparar abajo, ¿no?
Or replace it. If it doesn't, then it's okay, and we can just put it straight back in the wall panel.
Exactly, it's super broad, the whole game stack system.
One thing we will also do here right now is like, this is like, based on my basic template. So as you see in the default loadout, it still loads the relay that is not the usable we just built. So we will basically just go through those objects, and we also replace the entity class name with the one that we want to really play. So it's like in the template show usable, we put the relay template show usable, the relay template show usable. We basically go in the default loadout, and we now add the subcomponent that is similar name. So as you see, it's like if you have one type, you just need to populate, then it just propagates.
You mentioned
So yeah, go.
Obviously hierarchy is crucial. It's all of this is the Russian nesting doll you mentioned. It's do tags have a priority? Are some tags more important than other tags? Like if an NPC recognizes a tag or like a conflicting tag.
Está preguntando, descolando si hay tags que tengan más importancia que otras, es decir, si hay comportamientos que el NPC elija sobre otros o no.
And that depends on the logic more than anything. I mean, all tags are created equal. It's just how you use them. Whereas mannequin tags, they do have a priority. So they will see something like, say it was something more important, like how to deal with a fire, like I'm being shot. That's probably going to be a higher priority animation tag than, just like a standard idle, for example.
Gotcha.
Dícese que todo tiene prioridades, o sea que por ejemplo, digamos un fuego o un disparo, pues si te refieres a un disparo va a tener más prioridad que reparar un componente.
As well, so you can sort of work with the hierarchy of tags as well.
El comportamiento asociado, ¿no? A recibir un disparo va a tener más prioridad que pues el reparar un componente ahí con un tiro en el pecho.
Yeah, it's so fundamentally you can use them in pretty much any way you like. That's one of the best things about them.
So here what we are finishing to set up is mostly the same things we did like the
O sea, aquí de lo que estamos hablando, en definitiva de lo que están hablando, lo que están creando, es que, bueno, nos están mostrando cómo se crearía lo que sería un comportamiento de un NPC que luego esto se propaga. Es decir, en el sentido de que una vez tengan definido, pues si vosotros imaginaros, tenemos un componente de tamaño L. ¿Vale? Pues si tenemos un componente tamaño L, aunque sea diferentes marcas, diferentes historias, al final vemos que siempre tiene el mismo tamaño, va a tener los subcomponentes puestos en los mismos lugares, y entonces a la hora del NPC hacer las reparaciones pertinentes de ese comportamiento, va a haber un comportamiento asociado a comportamiento de... O sea, a ese tipo de objeto, de ese tamaño, en cierta posición, porque va a estar puesto así en las naves, y entonces, pues de repente el ingeniero que tengamos contratado el día de mañana en nuestra nave, pues vamos a ver que va a realizar las opciones y va a realizar acciones específicas relativas a esos comportamientos definidos, de tal manera de que no tienen que diseñar cada comportamiento para cada cosa, es decir, no tienen que ser un comportamiento distinto para una Aurora, un comportamiento distinto para una Gladius, sino simplemente tienen que definir los puntos de anclaje distintos para cada nave o para cada situación. Y con eso les bastaría para no tener que hacer todo a mano en un universo tan bestia como Star Citizen, ¿no?
in some object that actually is broken, basically. So we might want to call it broken subcomponent. So it means that we need to search for any object in the world that is, or I mean, not necessarily in the world, but like around us right now, that is damaged. It would be like this global condition damaged. This is an item.
So these are all the game tags.
Those are all the game tags. Yeah. And that is a subcomponent.
See, the trick with the tag database is trying to find a tag that already exists and trying to not create a new tag if one does already exist.
Yeah.
And let's try to make it like that right now. If this gets selected, what we try to do is we basically say something. Since we don't have a line right now, we just create what we call bubbles that are like kind of a cartoon message on top of them. And we say like, I have found a broken subcomponent. For 2 seconds, now we stay here, then we hold for now.
Lo que están haciendo es crear un comportamiento de que el tipo va a hablar, ¿no? Entonces le ponen una cosa que llaman
Save,
bubble
we go back.
y ahí ponen lo que sería el tema. Entonces vamos a ver qué hace.
First we remove the carryable.
En plan de, oh, tengo algo que está roto y que tengo que reparar, ¿no? Eso es lo que va a decir el tío, supuestamente.
Just this one. Go show usable. We put the wall panel. We rotate that just to make it a bit simpler for the character to go. And then we try to see if right now it finds something, and it doesn't find anything. Why? Because there's nothing broken pretty much. So how do we simulate that? We could create like a little mission that just randomly, puts the subcomponents to be broken. Sure, it's gonna take a little bit more time. We don't have so much time. So what we will do, we'll mostly just go in our version of the object and we just say that those are all broken. We just, basically assign only broken.
Vale, dice que podrían crear una misión y tal para hacer la simulación, que ahora mismo el NPC no hace nada porque el objeto no está roto, entonces van a ir simplemente a tal y simular que el objeto ya está dañado. Van a ir a la propiedad del objeto y ponerle que está dañado directamente.
So those objects are there. Usually, just delete, we put it back. Now we should be able to, in theory, find this one. But there's no bubble on top. This is because usually we use this as a debug throw. So we need to enable this, what we call the prototype dialog bubbles. Put it there. We go in here. Oh, I found the broken subcomponent. But unfortunately, it doesn't do anything with that. So it's like, okay, what do we want to do? So now we can ask the NPC to go there and take it, right? Let's try to take it. So how do we do that? So it's like, okay. And by the way, it's like, where are those objects right now, right? So, okay, we found them, but how do we know which one we found? The system automatically reports these objects into this magic variable that get created when you create a new subactivity that is called required object search results. The only thing is we don't really know how or when we're going to use it, right? Let's say you find 10 objects and there are 10 engineers. Then I go to one, you go to another one. then I still think that it's broken because somebody reported to me in the past. So we still need to try to validate if it is still broken. Right now, for simplification, we don't do that. Let's just see how we just first of all use that. So let's say we want to use a carryable. So we say like, you know what? I know those objects are carryable for now. I trust, and I just call it subcomponent. So we can cast similar to how we do with code. And eventually, I really hope to get this away. Me and Tony have lots of good plans to make sure that this can automatically inherit and be transformed. But for now, we basically say we have a lot of objects that we want to cast into usable. The problem is, this is a lot of options. I want to have a bit more control. So what I will do is I will probably just try to make a loop. And I will say, I want to loop until I fail what I'm doing next. And what I'm doing next is mostly popping an object. So I don't want to destroy this variable basically without being very careful. So I want to remove from that variable one object at the time and make sure that we know what we are doing basically. Subcomponent object. So we say like we take an object out of that and we put it into this other variable. Now, if this fails, it means there's no more object to do, so we can just, do something else. In our case here, it's like we could cast it to a usable. This could also fail, but this part, in a way, we don't really care right now. So let's say we are okay handling this error with just suppressing the failure and say like, you know what, this is fine for now. And if we need to do some logic, because basically what is important to think is in the behavior flow logic is you want to handle the failure at the point in which you still have the context, because the failure means something at that point. So in this case, failing means that I don't have any more object, but in this case, it means this object is not the type that I was expecting. So I could, in theory, add also something here that is, it's in core, I think, that we call bubble error, that are a sort of this bubble that we use for prototype, but also report an error similar to how we do code when we do assert. And it's like, you know what, this logic is wrong. I think you wrote something previously that is wrong, is reporting you some object that is not correct. Of course, it could be data error. This is why we don't crash like an assert might do in code, but we still report it a bit harsh. And there is a pop-up that comes out and says like, are you sure you need to review your logic here? And in release, of course, this.
Claro, lo que están haciendo pues es una lógica de comportamiento con diferentes opciones. Están añadiendo pues lo que sería un loop, ¿no? Que vuelve a empezar hasta que tenga éxito. Que luego pues mediante más comportamientos pues tienen lo que es el cast object to usable, que es en el momento que ya lo usan, y además en caso de que esto falle tienen una opción para ellos corregir errores de que vuelva a salir un mensaje de que hay un error. Pues en el caso de que haya un fallo en lo que es en la lógica que han descrito, ¿no? Entonces, mediante estas acciones deciden, bueno, pues si pasa esto, sucede esto otro, ocurre esto otro, y van enlazando diferentes comportamientos hasta que definen lo que es la ruta de comportamientos que va a tener el NPC cuando hay un algo que está roto, ¿no?
But to use diffuse, you need to
Es decir, ¿qué va a hacer el NPC cuando algo está roto? Pues se define mediante esos cuadraditos, añadiendo las diferentes acciones y tal, y vemos como el NPC pues va haciendo pues una especie de transición entre el estado de no hacer nada a empezar a hacer las diferentes cosas que ellos programan para tratar de simular un comportamiento del NPC.
Yes, we finished this one and then I just show you the logic, and I think we need to shorten a little bit what I expected, or we can just drag, if it doesn't work, we can just drag like the one that I already prepared and I can show you.
We haven't even started on the engineer behavior yet.
I know, right?
Very difficult to cover such a big behavior in such a short amount of time, and it's one of the more complicated behaviors that we've worked on. So. As you know, Dan.
These one and the bartender are the really complicated one.
Oh, we know how complicated bartender is. Some of us did 8 different segments on the bartender before it was done.
Yeah.
And we're going to call this part 1 then. Part 1 of many.
Yeah, we'll do part 2 engineer in a few weeks.
So basically
Se
what we
está-
are saying here is that
Se estaba discolando bromeando, puse esa cara por el tema de la cantidad de movidas que tuvo que hacer por el tema del bartender y tal. Y están cachondeándose diciendo, bueno, no os preocupéis que va a haber una parte 2 también de comportamientos de NPCs.
in the wall panel instead, as you can see, is like we have this other slotty stuff that says, oh, to interact from the top, you need to pass through the top high or top or bottom low use slot. So we can now see, delete this just for safety. See, the guy now moves there. He knows how to interact with that. It's actually, I used the wrong alignment slot here. It seems like. And this is why it's not set up correctly. Let me try to look at which one I wrote. Probably I copied the wrong one. Core wall panel.
While Fran is
But
working,
it's fine. Yeah.
while Fran is working, I'll pose a question to everybody else.
Mhm.
Why do NPCs love standing on chairs so much?
I think Fran's answered that a few times already, haven't you? It's one of those things. I
Yes.
mean,
It happens every
I've
time.
answered it when I've been doing Star Citizen streams as well. It's one of those kind of bugs that has the exact same visual output, but it has
1,000
lots
different
of things
causes.
that can cause. Yeah, exactly. So you fix it one way, and then the next week you've got the exact same visual output, but
Están preguntando en el chat de por qué los NPCs se siguen sentando en el aire y demás. Y dice que lo explicaron la otra vez y que es el típico bug que tiene, o sea, son diferentes bugs que tienen la misma salida. O sea, en realidad son diferentes fallos que hay que producen la misma salida, que el NPC se quede en el aire. Que corriges uno y luego aparece otro, ¿no?
The setups change slightly by accident in the parent above the variant, so could be absolutely anything.
I remember one recent. It was caused by people leaving the area. Then the NPCs that were still sitting in the seats, they basically got turned off. And then when a player came back, they were turned back on, but the game didn't put them sitting correctly in the seat anymore, so they were just standing on it instead.
There are like tons of problems basically that are causing that, and they're mostly coming from the streaming right now. This is why, like, I'm the first one that hates that bug. It's just that I think it's always like the problem is that the eye is at the end of the chain. So every time something gets improved, right, and we get this side effects that they all look like the same bug. This is the wrong, but most likely are not. So we had like this, as you see right now, he just took all the objects and he just dropped them all, of course, but it's kind of cool. It just went with all the animations and he played all those objects.
I never had that one, friend. So you've done something new there.
No, because I'm just looping through the take only, right? So it's like take one, then he takes the next one, he takes the next one, he takes the next one. That's the only thing it does right now. But it's for the standing on the chair, basically this is what we are trying right now. I will want to basically dedicate some time. We will dedicate some time to make a proper plan. I'm scheduling sometimes because I'm a bit tired of seeing it. Of course, like eventually I really want.
Bueno, están hablando de que quieren hacer un propio un plan adecuado para poder enfrentarse al bug de la silla. Dice que está un poco cansado de verlo de seguido y que tienen ganas de poder resolverlo, ¿no? De la puñetera vez.
We need to do it, but yeah, it's basically a lot due to sometimes, for example, we don't know when something streams out that it will eventually come back. That right. we can't right now guarantee it because we don't have yet the proper persistence, of that stuff. So it's like.
Claro, dice que ahora mismo no pueden garantizar que si algo aparece, si algo desaparece va a volver a aparecer, porque no tienen todavía la persistencia adecuada, o sea, los sistemas de persistencia adecuada no pueden programar eso, ¿no? Entonces tienen que resolver ese tema, ¿no? Primero de la persistencia. Que eso ya sabéis que se hace con el pcaché, el persisting caché y todo ese tema. Que vendrá después del caché, supongo.
Place already lots of fallbacks, and whenever we find them, we basically had them, and then we try to recover from some of the situations right now as well. So there is a lot of little pieces because with the population manager, of course, this is meant to be different, right? When NPCs goes away, those will be repopulated by the population manager. So this is why, like, in a way, this is not a problem that will exist in the future, right? Because it's basically with our plan that is already a known problem in a way, of the fact that the guys just come back for just because the streaming kicks in, right? But then there is like, of course, the stuff that there might be some bugs sometimes with the LOD update. We try to be efficient in updating stuff that is not visible, and maybe that one fails to attach, you know, and we are searching for some of this stuff. So there is like, yeah, as Dan said, same visual problem with several bugs that we are, you know, constantly fixing, and some new optimization and things.
Claro, además dice que otro de los problemas es el hoyo que entra en streaming, ¿no? Que cuando estamos buscando por un objeto y todavía no se streamea o tarda en streamear, pues que eso también genera problemas, ¿no?
The actual logic works, you know, it's going to be like just the last 2 minutes. If we go on the wall panel, when we do take, what do? We basically still say like, oh, I want to open the panel. No matter what, I want to try to open it. And then in the open, this is where all the game tags we have set up come into play. Because basically what we try to do is, for example, we try to see, say, are we on the top? Are interacting with the top, or are we interacting with the bottom? I mean, this is really for safety. Because
claro, al final esto que estamos viendo aquí es diferentes lógicas, ¿no? De si estamos en la parte de arriba, si estamos en la parte de abajo, y cada parte pues acompañada con diferentes comportamientos, como vemos ahí, ¿no? De lo que tiene que hacer, varios diferentes tags para que el NPC se adecue a las diferentes zonas que está trabajando.
Because at the end of the day, use channels for our, you know, internal logic are just functions. We can just call function and then just let them execute if necessary, right? And of course, like whenever we see like, is this real a problem or performance something, then we can have some early out or other double checks, and we can optimize this. But this gives us like a very scalable solution, first of all, for the logic, you know. And then the take says like, okay, after I open, now I'm in a state in which I know that it's been opened. The player could have opened before, right? Even if the eye is really precise, we'll always close all the doors. We can never guarantee that, you know, because player could troll around, or actually might have forgotten, because maybe, I don't know, the eye as well might have combat started while they were repairing something, right? And now they are back after 1 hour.
It also means that we're able to have NPC behavior that just goes around closing all the wall panels.
Absolutely. And they're like, oh, who opened that? Actually, it could even feel wrong. Like, you know, there could be guys in a state in which they say, I expect everything to be closed. If something has opened, maybe there's somebody here not expecting, right? And this we could also build on top of that.
It's going to be
and then
one guy on
like,
a javelin just walking around closing all the doors.
It's like, oh, man, there's somebody always opening these wall panels.
And that's why it's so cool. Sorry,
yeah.
That's why it's so cool. I was just saying it like substantially it's like super generic, like in like how we sort of modularize it and split up everything into tasks, and that's what makes it so cool, because we can sort of do whatever we basically want. You know, we can chain the tasks in every way we want, and we can sort of make like so many different behaviors, like because of this modularity.
Yeah, and this is the other magic task that is taking all the data, we put it there, and says which mannequin tags I need to use to interact with that object, and then it will get that one from the item port, and then we merge it from, you know, it's like there is like some variable here that get populated by the code that says like, oh,
ya están hablando un poco sobre lo que es la magia de utilizar el Subsumption Logic, que permite que sea totalmente escalable y que puedan hacer prácticamente lo que ellos quieran, lo que les dé la gana, definiendo diferentes comportamientos para incorporarlos a la Subsumption, ¿no? Y pues eso, pues escalarlo a lo que es el verso entero y demás.
In this case, for example, the usable variable contains the wall panel, and it's like, we want to open the wall panel, we don't want to take the wall panel, but then we want to interact with a way with the item to take, you know, that is actually coming as well from the routing, you know, and it's the initial routing usable, that is like, I started from the fuse and I arrived to the wall panel. So we have all these little pieces that has been, you know, implemented in all those years, basically, you know, and especially with the bartender helped us a lot, and the engineer is helping us.
Claro, está diciendo que todo lo que vemos aquí en realidad son todas las pequeñas piezas que han ido incorporando a lo largo de los años, y de que una de las cosas que les ha ayudado muchísimo ha sido el bartender. O sea, que realmente este curro que han estado haciendo lleva un montón de tiempo hacerlo. Un montón.
If it's possible in the tool, you guys will do it 100%. Like you.
I joked about how many segments, how many times we covered the bartender, but really the value of all that work, you know, wasn't just the bartender. It was creating this infrastructure that you've been showing us for this last hour that we can now
Claro,
apply
está
to
diciendo
everything.
efectivamente Discolando que todo lo que hemos visto del bartender, que ha sido crear la infraestructura de lo que estamos viendo en esta hora, ¿no? De poder realizar este trabajo, de poder modificar comportamientos de los NPCs de esta manera. Que todo eso viene de algún sitio, ¿no?
Of research and tech development, and it's kind of coming out as probably a bit of verbal diarrhea, but it's
we need to make it faster for designers. This is our next goal. Is of course, like for example, we have a tool we are working on that is the usable builder, right? I think some of those features are not yet supported in there. This is why I didn't show it today. But the goal is to have these tools where you have a bit.
Que además dice que el objetivo es toda esta herramienta que hemos estado viendo que sea mucho más rápido para los diseñadores, para que puedan, pues, cuando hacer el contenido, al final daros cuenta de que esto lo van a utilizar otras personas en plan de, bueno, quiero un ingeniero y quiero que este ingeniero se encargue de esta zona, se encargue de esto, se encargue de aquello, y todo esto ya esté definido. O sea, a la hora de hacer un artista un escenario, un diseñador de niveles o lo que sea un escenario, pues va a hacer eso. Entonces, pues dice que quieren hacer la herramienta más rápida, más fácil de utilizar todavía.
Parallel, but that means also that you're a bit slower in developing the system, and it depends about the priority of the company as well, what you want to deliver.
I mean, it was only a couple of years ago that the concept of use channels didn't even exist, and yet we still had usables in the game.
Well, we've got a little over 1,200 people watching live who all are ready to create NPCs now.
Thank you guys for all the attention. I hope, like, again, for me it feels always like that is not enough what I'm showing, right? But I think it could be nice to also get the feedback from people, like whatever they want to see, we can show it next time.
Hayden, before I let you go, I have to mention your RGB chair.
Yeah.
Why, thank you. Yeah,
where did you get an RGB chair?
It's the 100 million PewDiePie limited edition chair. I have to represent.
Oh no.
And I'm one of them. I'm sorry.
Discrete current just went straight down the toilet.
That has to be one. Come on.
All right. Well, cool. That's where we'll end the show. Thanks, Fran, Dan, Jacob, Idris, and Hayden. Thank you for taking the time out of the end of your week to be here on the show. I understand you're the only studio that doesn't have Monday off, right?
No. But the third is off in Germany, so we have.
Yeah, you guys have plenty of bank holidays, but you enjoy the one day you guys have to work and we'll all be off on Monday.
We'll be so quiet.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Guys, this has been Star Citizen Live Game Dev, Building NPC Behaviors. I was your host, Jared Huckabee. We'll see you next week, everybody. Take care. Bye.
Bye, guys.
It was a pleasure.
See you.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bueno, pues luego estaban bromeando sobre
PewDiePie chair? Really?
Están todavía bromeando sobre la silla RGB del compañero, ¿no? Y sin más. Y bueno, pues ahí ha estado el Star Citizen Live, que ha estado interesante y demás. Y ahora, pues, para